A long while back, I did an episode on bottled and canned old fashions, and I included in that lineup a bottle of Jacquin's. I did it again. It's not Joaquin's, it's Jacquin's. Jacquin's. Interesting linguistics there. I'd always been told it was sort of a kind of bottled old fashioned, but that turned out to not really be the case, and actually a lot of people in the comments had thoughts on Rock and Rye and wanted me to revisit the subject, which caught me by surprise because I didn't know Rock and Rye was still relevant, but sure. Let's do that today on HCD. Later in this episode, I'm actually going to make my own batch of Rock and Rye, and I've got a bunch of bottles of the stuff here that I'm going to sample and review as well. But first, I think we should figure out what exactly Rock and Rye is. Well, I got to doing a bit of reading on the subject, and the first few articles I found basically say that Rock and Rye, which is a combination of rock candy and rye whiskey. Rock candy, by the way, is just crystallized sugar syrup. That's all it is. It's sugar. In some form or another has been a folk remedy since at least the 1870s, and I had assumed that was about as much detail as I'd be able to squeeze out of the murk of history on the origins of this stuff. I assumed wrong. As always, leave it to David Wonders to find the receipts. In a 2019 article in the Daily Beast, which will be linked in the pinned comment below, he traces the origin of Rock and Rye, at least the commercially available stuff, to an article recounting a particular ex-judge's 1877 trolley ride with a reporter from the New York Sun. From the New York Sun's printing of the judge's account of how 5 pounds rock candy dissolved into a gallon of rye whiskey had cured him of consumption, Wondrich finds the first ad for bottled Rock and Rye for sale in 1878, a little less than 2 months after that article had been printed. As near as anyone can guess, Rock and Rye and similar sugar whiskey concoctions had been popular as folk remedies before 1878. It's just really hard to find, like, records of that, right? And that makes sense. I mean, because I think pretty much all alcohol consumption has its roots in supposed medicine. The julep and the cocktail both enjoyed curative claims. Of course, there's the gin and tonic, which actually was a medicine. At the height of its popularity, there were dubious bottlings of medicine show mystery cure-all tonics being sold under this name, often containing no actual rye, probably not rock candy, and a lot of very dangerous chemicals that you don't want to drink. But until recent years, that star had faded, with Rock and Rye kind of being relegated to the back of dusty old liquor cabinets and being prescribed for coughs and colds, mainly by grandmas clinging to the traditions of their youth, and more mainly by Pennsylvania grandmas, it seems, where the stuff kind of retained a little bit more popularity than in other places. Now there is some new stuff on the market joining the stalwart Jacquin's, and I think, based on your comments, there might even be a mini Rock and Rye revival going on around here. So let's taste some Rock and Rye right after this. Let's get into the Rock and Rye. I didn't pick an order to do these in. Let's revisit Jacquin's, America's oldest cordial producer. This one is bottled at 27% alcohol by volume. Has a lot of mold and stuff floating around in there. It's probably not mold. It's probably not fair. I don't know. It looks gross. I mean, it is truly gross looking shit. It used to be a cherry and it's got no color left, and then there's like some orange wedges. This is some special shit. It doesn't have really any serving instructions. I think we just put it over an ice cube and stir it up. Boom. Jacquin's. Am I smelling orange? I might be smelling the orange. It's got some kind of a citrusy smell. Like, on first glance, that smells just sort of chemical. But when you think about it, it's like, no, that's some kind of lemon or citrus oil. That's so weird. It does taste putrid. Like putridly sweet. It tastes like the smell of walking into a florist, which sounds nice, but it's not. Like, you go into a florist shop, in my experience, they don't smell like flowers. They smell like fertilizer, water being recirculated and kind of being stale, funky. I think I called it corpse juice recently. Like, it does. It has like a kind of the sickeningly sweet taste of decay. I don't know what that actually is, but it's syrupy. I mean, and it would be, right? Only 27% alcohol. I don't like it, though. It also has this, there's like a metallicness to it. And I think that's part of what I'm detecting as like sort of rotting dead flowers. I don't love it. Up next, I'm going to do Leroux Rock and Rye. This is another one that's been around forever. Let me put it this way. The Stolen, the Mr. Katz, and the Slow and Low, they all kind of represent this Rock and Rye revival that's going on, like the upmarket Rock and Rye, refined and improved. Jacquin's and Leroux is like sort of the old school, like this is cheap, weird stuff. Grandma medicine cough syrup, really. Much less of a red color with this one. The Jacquin's has like a really reddish color. And actually, I don't hate the reddish color. I kind of think that's a neat touch. This actually says caramel color added. Leroux is a royal family of international acclaim. It says so right here. Okay, here we go with Leroux. Ooh, man. That's a really weird smell. It's like rubbing alcohol and phosgene, like rotting hay. Yeah, that's gross. Whoa, I hate that. Oh man, that's a weird. Whoa. Hot mama, that's weird. What the hell? That, man, wow. Carpet glue. It tastes toxic. Like, this is freaking foul, man. Oh my God. Meredith asked me, on the scale of Malort to Kialing wine Baijiu, where does this fall? I would say it's comparable to the unpleasantness of Malort, in my opinion, but a very different stripe of unpleasantness. Malort is intensely bitter. This is very sweet. It just tastes wrong. The Kialing wine Baijiu, it's not even a taste so much as like your body rejects it. It tastes unholy. Nothing you can consume should taste like that or do what it does to you. I mean, like, you convulse. It's bizarre. This is, let's get some more ice water on it. It's starting to melt a little harder here. I can see it. This is gross. Oh my God. Wow. I might prefer Malort. I'm not going to lie. It really, truly tastes like a Berber carpet that you've boiled. Like a plasticky, acrylic, melting glue. That is... Ow, man, that is gross. Let's try some Mr. Katz's American Rock and Rye. This actually has a label on it. Mr. Katz's on the old B&O Railroad. An American classic Rock and Rye could once be found on the back bar of most noteworthy establishments. Blended with rock candy sugar, dried Bing cherries, orange peel, and cinnamon bark. It's bottled at 65 proof. So this is a little bit more alcohol content than the other two. It's up to 32% now. It didn't say whether I should or shouldn't address the sediments on the bottom. Generally speaking, when there's sediments, you want to shake them in, you know. So that's my instinct, is shake them in. Don't let them sit on the bottom unless you're dealing with, like, you know, aged port wines or something like that. It has a nice dark cola look to it. Let's put it on the rocks. Let's try it out. This is from New York Distilling Company. Not very syrupy. Just on the pour, you can tell. That's a much lighter pour than the other two, which were like bloop, bloop. This is more blip, blip. That's like a lighter pour. It's not so syrupy. Also, you can just see the viscosity and the way it kind of moves over the ice. I wanted to do this episode dressed as like Colonel Sanders, because there's the song St. Louis Blues. I love that man like a Kentucky colonel likes his rock and rye. Anyway, this is Mr. Katz, Mr. Katz's Rock and Rye. Here we go. Smells like whiskey. That is light. That is not. Oh, wow. Okay, wow. Cool. That just tastes like a Manhattan. Which makes sense. You know, you put cherries into a Manhattan. It's like taking the cherries and making them infusing them throughout the drink. You do get some cherry notes. That is so completely different character from the others. That is very not sweet at all. I mean, then there's some stuff in there that kind of registers as being, I wonder what brand of bitters that is. But actually, it's probably that the kind of herbal ingredients that go into a Rock and Rye are probably kind of overlapping with some of the flavor profiles of a bitters. So it could be that. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's okay. Like, as a product, it's way less disgusting. Like, I don't wanna say it's less disgusting. That sounds like it's still disgusting. As a product, it's way more interesting than these like syrupy, these weirdos, these two guys here. If you're calling it Rock and Rye, I want it to be something totally unique. I think it could be fruitier. I think it'd even be a little bit sweeter than this, to be honest. There's a big difference between the level of sugar here and the level of sugar here or here. You could come up a lot in sweetness on this sucker before you're at one of these crazy things. But I would basically treat this like a bottled Manhattan. That's basically what it tastes like. And if you put that in your head, like, oh, this is my bottled Manhattan, nice. It's nice, nice. Let's get to the next one. Let's do Stolen. Now look at that. The bottle is black, but that is just light. That looks like, which just looks like rye. It doesn't look like anything else. This is called Stolen Rock and Rye, made with aged American rye whiskey, raw honey, orange peel. This is 80 proof. This is a full proof spirit. Now I have a funny feeling this is gonna taste basically like straight spirits. That is an old fashioned. I mean, that just tastes like an old fashioned. I like it too. It's not a bad old fashioned. That's about how I like my old fashions. Shoot, man, I like that a lot. There's some apple notes in there. That's interesting. I'm not picking up on the honey. It says it was made with honey, but I wonder if the rye plus honey somehow equals apple. Could be. But I get apple. I get like green apples, rye, a little sweet. Nice, nice. I like this one over this one, to be honest. I like the Stolen over the Mr. Katz, personally. It's just a flavor profile I find that, you know, honestly, I'm not a Manhattan guy. I don't really like Manhattans. I like them a lot less after shooting the 42 Manhattan Matrix, by the way. I don't dislike them, it's just not my go-to. My go-to is an old-fashioned. And in fact, I think that this probably should have been one of the lineup in my bottled old-fashioned episodes. I would say that you can drink this as a bottled old-fashioned and you'd be pretty happy about it. Let's get to Slow and Low. I think this is probably the most celebrated of the Rock and Rye revival. Certainly has, oh man, I gotta say, this is sexy branding. We got a special bottle with this twisty neck. This logo of the bee on the orange, that is just gorgeous. I love that. 42% alcohol, so we're actually over 80 proof. Hochstadters. You people with the names. Hochstadter's Slow and Low. It says established 1884, but I know it just kind of came to market, so it's got to be a revival or something. 84 proof, straight rye whiskey, rock candy, raw honey, aromatic bitters, and navel oranges. Extra dry, both sides. Pour over ice and serve. Oh man, locally union made. I love unions. Hell yeah, man. I didn't know they were union made. And look at this. They even have, are those like usable stickers or something? Like if you look through the juice, there's all kinds of cool little artwork going on inside there. It's a neat bottle. I like it. Some people are going to say that's some hipster ass shit. I just think it's nice. I like it. All right, here we go. Big neck. I mean, you can't put a speed pour on that, that's for sure. Let's do the Hochstadter Slow and Low. Totally different nose. It smells like cola almost. Here we go. Hochstadters. Wow. Okay. I get why this is the most celebrated one, because this doesn't taste like an existing cocktail. This doesn't taste like an old-fashioned or Manhattan. This tastes like its own thing. You get immediately that whether or not you like that thing, it's a subjective question. This is objectively foul. Nobody likes this. This is objectively freaking weird. Some people like this, but the people who like this know that they're weird for liking it. This stands on its own legs. I haven't decided if I personally like it or not, but it's like, it is interesting. Let's go in again. You get a lot of orange. And I might be picking up on hints of honey. You know, first blush, I was gonna say it was a little malty, but I think that's actually a honey note that is coming around at the end there. It has a little evolution to it, you know, that's interesting. I like it. I would say that you're gonna treat it a lot like an old fashioned because it's really potent stuff. And one or two of these and you're gonna be out for the count. I mean, like proofy stuff. It is interesting. I suppose if I told you here's an old fashioned and I had just poured that, you'd probably believe me. But I also think that if you're trying to be objective about it, it doesn't really present as an old-fashioned. It definitely doesn't present as something like a Manhattan. It's a lot closer to an old-fashioned than a Manhattan. This really does taste like a bottled Manhattan, there's no question. And this one really tastes pretty strongly like an old-fashioned that I would make. This tastes like an old-fashioned that somebody I don't know might make. It really does taste like its own thing. What do I think about Rock and Rye having tasted all these in general? I don't know. I don't know what I hope there's a place for these things. I'm not inclined to mix a new cocktail with these. Like they're already so blended, so mixed, so flavored, so sweetened that like the idea of using Rock and Rye as an ingredient in something else seems weird to me. So it's like, it's meant to be drank on the rocks. Like that's it. Do I seek like a ready to pour beverage that I can just throw on an ice cube and stir up? Not really. It's not that hard for me to go 1, 2, stir, peel, you know, make an old fashioned. Like it takes a second. So I'm probably personally going to reach for the old fashioned, but definitely some people want these. The question I have then is, what is the platonic ideal of a Rock and Rye? What is the correct answer? These are all representing a fundamentally different design philosophy from this stuff, which is syrup. I mean, it's just like, it's whiskey syrup. In a weird way, in a perverse way, even though I don't like these, if you're gonna make a Rock and Rye, I want it to be more divergent from the rye and to really, really be its own thing and kind of unrecognizable as like, oh, this is a lot like a this cocktail or something like that. Now that I've had my Rock and Rye, I'm ready to take a swing at making my own. So let's do that right after this. So let's make some Rock and Rye here, now, today. Old Judge Schnabel in 1877, he calls for 5 pounds of rock candy to a gallon of rye. A gallon of 100 proof whiskey should clock in at around 7.84 pounds. Water would be 8.34 pounds, which makes our 5 pounds of rock candy version very sweet indeed. That's 1/3 rock to 2/3 rye, right? David Wondrich calls for a pound of rock candy to a 750 of whiskey, which is actually just around the same ratio. I didn't really work out the math, but I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, it's closer than you think. So that's probably not a bad place to start. I found a recipe in Whiskey Advocate that calls for using Clay's Horehound drops, hard candies infused with a medicinal herb that I also found most often in other rock and rye recipes. And I liked that idea a lot, so I bought a bunch of these, but that recipe only called for like 4 to 5 of these drops per 750 of rye and a couple tablespoons of honey, which seems very unsweet. That to me is swinging way too far away from, you know, the old guard syrupy direction. I don't even know if you'd be able to taste 4 or 5 of these in a 750. I think that's kind of crazy. At any rate, I think armed with this knowledge of the standard recipe ratio, the idea of using Horehound drops, and ideas about what I liked from these and what would typically go into a rock and rye, particularly like a homebrew rock and rye, which is an herbal medicinal thing. I want to come up with a recipe of my own. I don't have anything written. I'm just going to kind of wing it. I want to make something that is a little bit weirder. I want to make something here that's a little bit more true to the idea of rock and rye having supposed medicinal roots and being pretty sweet, to be honest, like a cough syrup, right? Because that's sort of the idea, I think. So I haven't even sampled one of these Clay's Horehound drops, these old-time candies. Well, let's try one. Where now? And that's the idea, by the way, in that recipe. Use this instead of unflavored rock candy, and I may end up using some sugar. Rock candy is sugar. That's all it is. It is sugar. It doesn't really taste like much. I mean, it tastes like I've now turned this into a show where you wait for me to eat a hard candy, the slowest thing known to man. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what Horehound is, and I don't want you to think I'm making it up. Horehound. I trust them that there's some Horehound in here, but this just tastes like sugar to me. I'm gonna chew it up now. I release the Horehound. That's a funny name. No, man, that's just sugar. I bought these jars a while back for the purposes of infusing things, and I got my kitchen scale, and we're gonna wing it. You too can release the Horehound by clicking the link in the pinned comment below and ordering some Clay's Candy Horehound old-fashioned hard candy. It's available from Amazon using the affiliate link in the pinned comment below. And also, if you guys want to use in the bottles I use on the show, swing by Curiata. They will certainly have some Hochstatters, and we'll try to get some Mr. Katz and Stolen on there. These guys are available at your local whatever shop. They serve 30 states in America, which represent 80% of the US population. If you want to use the stuff I use on the show, you can get it at Curiata. Drink.curiata.com. Use the link in the pinned comment below. I know I'm going to do a whole bottle of rye. I happen to be using this Rittenhouse rye. I'm going to use the whole thing. I don't care. So we're going to pour this 750 into this bottle. It's a 1 liter bottle, so I should leave me with some room to work. All right, there you go. 700 grams of rye. So each of these weighs about 4 grams. Maybe we'll do 100 grams. I'm now going to add some Demerara sugar. This is sugar in the raw. How much am I going to add? I don't know. We're about 100 grams there. We have 700 grams of rye and 300-ish grams of sugar total. 100 of those grams are from the hard candies, 200 grams of the Demerara sugar. I think that once this dissolves, and it's going to take a long time to dissolve, that will get us to what I want to hit, which is sort of between the dry Rock and Ryes and the super syrupy Rock and Ryes. That's a little bit better than 2 parts rye to 1 part sugar. I want to add 1 cinnamon stick, 3 wedges of orange, so 71 grams of orange. Let's take a lemon, do the same thing. 2 wedges there. And then I have a bunch of like dried herbs that I use for infusing. Doesn't come up that much on the show. I'm gonna throw some hibiscus in there because I really like the color of the Jacquins and I wanna try and get some of that. I don't find that hibiscus tastes like much, but it will add a little bit of something kind of flowery and it's gonna add a lot of like reddish color. Okay, so that's actually a little over a gram. And then the other thing I wanted to add was a little bit of bitter orange. It doesn't take much of this. Again, if you make it to a gram, that's quite a bit. So there's 1 gram of bitter orange. And now I'm gonna seal this up and hopefully don't spill any when I do. Okay, we're sealed. Normally, as I clean this up, normally you're not going to get sugar to dissolve into a pure spirit like this. There is a little bit of water there though, right? Like it's not pure spirit. It's not 100% alcohol. It's only 50% alcohol. So there's room in that water for the sugar to dissolve into. And we're just gonna it's gonna take time. That's all there is to it. But that in a few days is gonna be some interesting stuff to try. And for now, we're gonna take a little break. And when we come back, we're gonna try that and finish up this episode. All right, so it's been about 3 days. I think 3 days exactly. And actually, as of this morning, all of our sugar is dissolved. It took all of 3 days, but it's gone now. The candies, the sugars, everything is dissolved. Although the skins of these lemons and oranges look pretty unfazed, the fruit is really breaking down. The pulp is falling apart here. And I can see that the hibiscus has really puffed up and loosened, and the cinnamon has kind of bleached out a little bit and softened, and the what do you call it? The bitter orange peels have kind of gone soft and puffy too, and those are really dry. So I think we've done a lot of infusion here, and I'm ready to stop it. I'm good with this. So I'm just gonna decant that into this little decanter I've got. I'm always opposed to making an old fashioned with a sugar cube because the amount of water that's in there, you cannot get that sugar to dissolve into the whiskey. But the truth is that you can get sugar to dissolve into a pretty much pure spirit. It just takes a really long time. So here we go, doing a pour. There we go, nice pour. Going right through a little screen here. Really got every drop. Let's try one of these gross old oranges. Yeah, I don't want to do that. They're not terrible, but they're pretty boozy. All right, and there we have it. This is our Rock and Rye. I'm gonna try a little bit of it neat right now. Pretty syrupy based on what I saw coming out of there. Thick. Here we go, a little taste. Ooh. Oh yeah, I like that. Yes, that is exactly what I wanted this to taste like. Heck yeah. That is delicious. That is delicious. That came out so good. It is sweet. I don't think it's too sweet though, because it's Rock and Rye. Like, you know, what it is matters. It's a lot sweeter than an old fashioned. I still think it's less sweet than like Jacquin's or this for sure, which are just straight up syrups. This tastes like cinnamon. Actually, the cinnamon is a really big presence in there. That one stick of cinnamon did a lot of infusion. It has orange and lemon notes from the oils, somewhat muted here, but definitely present, definitely present. The hibiscus, I don't know how much color it's provided. Yeah, definitely some, you know, because like there's a little bit of the Rittenhouse left. You can see it's gotten a lot redder from where this guy started. A lot of that is though also coming from the fact that I used a Demerara Sugar, which the molasses in there carries a lot of color, and I think that was a good move. That brought in a lot of flavor. The bitter oranges, yes, you're definitely getting a little snap, a little bite of bitterness, and not too much. I think that somehow, I think I lucked out. I'm trying to kind of find a place in between where this wouldn't be like a bottled old fashioned. It's a product into it's in a category into its own, but also with an eye towards like not making straight up cough syrups. When I say that too, like I could see this being an old time cough syrup. Like I think that Mary Poppins would put that in a spoon and feed it to you, right? Hers was rum punch, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say too, there are some, you probably see it there, you can definitely see it there, little bits of pulp from the orange and the lemons. Usually when you see that in something like that's not so good. That means those pulpy bits could grow molds and go bad, but with our sugar content here and our alcohol content, I don't know. I mean, I think that they're probably safe. Part of me thinks like, oh, strain them out with a cheesecloth or something. Another part of me is like, let it go. Let's see what happens. Because certainly in something like Jacquin's, which honestly, I think it's probably lower proof, it's not really an issue. That stuff, it's not causing like botulism outbreaks or anything like that. I want to try this on ice because I have a funny feeling it'll be a little different on ice. So I've got another bigger glass here. You don't have to spin your ice when you drop it into a glass, but I do. You can see the sugar actually flowing around the ice cube there. Do you guys just want like pouring and stirring ASMR? Let me know in the comments below. Meredith seems to think that we should make like 6-hour-long ASMR reels of like close-up footage. I could do a binaural like chit chat. All right, here we go. This is spun on ice and chilled and watered Greg's Rock and Rye. Here we go. Yeah, this is good. Very orangey. Really cool how chilling and diluting that really brings the orange up. So whereas like an old fashioned, because of like that expression of oil, has like a bright, fresh orange vibe, this has a candied orange vibe, like orange gummies or like a Terry's chocolate orange or something like that. Like it has that kind of orange confection thing happening. You get a blast of cinnamon. I don't know if I'm catching lemon specifically, but I assume that whatever I'm tasting is actually really a combination of the lemon and the orange plus the sugar. And there is a spiciness to this. There's that cinnamon spice, the rye spice. I think a spicier rye actually might even be better. Rittenhouse is pretty run-of-the-mill, dead center one. I mean, you're talking expensive, but like get yourself a barrel-aged, a cask strength like Alberta Premium or something like that, or High West. You could go with something smoky, like the High West Campfire. Oh, that might be really good. And maple syrup will crystallize too, so you don't necessarily need to use pure cane sugar. You could use a maple. I kind of was winging it. I mean, I was 100% winging it on my ratios, but I feel like I nailed it, and I couldn't be happier with how it came out. It is exactly, but also like, also different enough that it's not just an old fashioned in a bottle. Much thanks to David Wonders for writing an excellent article in the Daily Beast, which provided real research here. I don't care if you like, comment, or subscribe. Do whatever you want, that's fine. But what I do love is when you watch the show. That's so nice of you to do. And whether you're a new fan or an old boy, I've been making the show for 6 years. I bet there's something you haven't seen. Here are 4 options for you to check out right now. Why don't you go and check them out? Well, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with another episode of HTD.